My name is Rachel Chen, and I'm 32 years old. The champagne was still cold in my glass when my mother cleared her throat and smiled that smile I'd spent 3 decades learning to decode. We were standing in my new living room, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and the sharp smell of fresh paint. Sunlight poured through windows I'd saved 5 years to afford. My boyfriend David squeezed my hand as guests wandered through the open floor plan, admiring the exposed brick I'd fallen in love with during the first showing. "Everyone," my mother announced, her voice cutting through the casual chatter like a conductor demanding silence. "I have wonderful news to share during this special celebration." The room stilled. Someone set down a plate. My father appeared beside her, hands in his pockets, that familiar look of resignation already settling into the lines around his mouth. "Tyler will be moving into the downstairs bedroom next week," she said, beaming like she'd just announced a promotion instead of an invasion. "He needs a stable environment to focus on his music career, and Rachel has all this extra space now." My younger brother Tyler lounged against my new kitchen counter, a craft beer in one hand, that lazy grin spreading across his face like he'd just won something. "Don't stress, Rach. It's temporary, just until my EP drops and I can afford my own place. 6 months, tops." I felt David's fingers tighten around mine. 3 pulses. "Our private code. Are you okay? Do you need backup? Should we leave?" 6 months. The same 6 months he'd promised 4 years ago when he crashed in my studio apartment and stayed 18 months. The same 6 months that preceded every failed venture, every broken promise, every dollar I'd never see again. "Actually," I said, my voice steadier than the earthquake happening inside my chest, "that's not going to work." My mother's smile didn't falter, but something sharpened in her eyes. "Rachel, don't be selfish. Family takes care of family." Tyler pushed off the counter. "Come on, sis. You've got 3 bedrooms. I saw the listing online. You're really going to let me stay homeless when you're sitting on all this space?" Homeless. The word hung in the air like accusation, like I was personally responsible for his circumstances, like the last decade of bailouts had never happened. I'd learned early that being the oldest meant being the scaffolding everyone else leaned on. When I was 12 and Tyler was 8, I gave up my bedroom so he could have the bigger one with better light for his toys. My mother said I was mature enough to understand. When I was 17, working weekends at a cafe to save for college, Tyler borrowed $300 from my sock drawer for concert tickets. My father said I should be flattered he felt comfortable asking. When I was 23 and Tyler was 19, he maxed out the credit card I'd stupidly added him to as an authorized user, tanking my credit score right before I applied for my first apartment. My mother said mistakes happen, and wasn't I glad I could help him learn? The pattern was tidy. I was responsible. He was creative. I planned. He dreamed. I sacrificed. He received. By 32, I'd stopped calling it family values and started calling it what my therapist did, enabling. David reached into his jacket pocket and handed me a folded document. We'd prepared for this moment 3 weeks ago, the night my mother casually mentioned at Sunday dinner that Tyler needed a fresh start. David worked in contract law. He knew my family's playbook better than they did. "This is my lease agreement," I said, unfolding the paper. "Signed by both David and me as co-tenants. Section 7. Clause B states that no additional occupants may reside in the property without written consent from all parties on the lease and approval from the landlord." My mother blinked. "You're citing contracts at your own brother?" "I'm setting boundaries with someone who's borrowed $47,000 from me over 10 years and repaid 0. The number landed like a slap. Someone near the fireplace inhaled sharply. Tyler's grin finally cracked. "That's dramatic," he said, but his voice had lost its easy confidence. "You're really keeping receipts?" I pulled out my phone and opened the spreadsheet I'd compiled with my therapist. 6 years of bank statements, Venmo transactions, texts begging for emergency loans that became permanent gifts. $12,000 for the startup that folded in 3 months. $8,000 in damage deposits when he trashed my last apartment and I lost my security deposit. $15,000 in credit card debt from his authorized user spending spree. $7,000 in various emergency loans for rent, car repairs, medical bills that insurance would have covered if he'd kept the job with benefits. $5,000 in moving expenses when I had to break my lease early because his drug-dealing friend kept showing up at 3 a.m. $47,362, I said quietly, and that's just what I could document. It doesn't include the emotional cost of being your safety net. My father stepped forward, his face flushing. "You're embarrassing yourself, Rachel. This isn't how we raised you." "You raised me to give until it hurt," I said. You raised Tyler to take until I broke. I'm done breaking. Tyler set down his beer, his hands shaking slightly. I can't believe you'd throw this in my face at your housewarming party. In front of everyone. You made this public when you announced you were moving in without asking me, David said, his voice calm and level. Rachel's just responding in kind. My mother's face had gone pale beneath her makeup. We're family. You don't treat family like criminals. No, I said. I treat family like people who respect boundaries. You went to the landlord last week and asked for a spare key, claiming you were my emergency contact. You took photos of the downstairs bedroom and sent them to Tyler with measurements. You told Aunt Susan and Aunt Linda that I'd agreed to let him stay, so now they're posting congratulations on Facebook about what a good sister I am. I'd discovered all of this through a combination of my landlord's heads-up call, Tyler's Instagram story, and my cousin's messages asking why I hadn't mentioned my new roommate. That's not illegal, my mother said, but her voice wavered. We were just preparing. It's boundary violation, I said. And it stops now. Tyler can visit like any guest, between the hours of 10 a.m. and 8 p.m., with 24 hours advance notice. If he wants to move in, he needs to sign a lease, pay first and last month's rent plus security deposit, and provide proof of employment with 3 consecutive pay stubs. Tyler laughed, high and brittle. You're insane. I'm your brother, not some random Craigslist roommate. Exactly, I said. You're my brother. Which makes it worse that you've spent a decade treating me like an ATM with unconditional love programmed into the interface. My mother reached for the spreadsheet, but I pulled it back. This isn't negotiable, Mom. I've already spoken to my landlord, changed my locks, and installed security cameras. If Tyler tries to move in without my written consent, I'll file a trespassing report. You'd call the police on your own brother? My father's voice cracked with disbelief. I'd protect my home from someone with a documented history of stealing from me, destroying my property, and violating my trust, I said. The fact that he's my brother doesn't erase the pattern. It just makes it sadder. The room had gone completely silent. 30 people holding their breath, phones probably recording, this moment already becoming the family story that would define every future gathering. David's aunt, a woman I'd met twice, started clapping slowly. Then David's father joined her. Then my coworker Jamie, who'd helped me move boxes last weekend and heard the whole Tyler saga during pizza breaks. My mother's face crumpled. You've become so cold, Rachel. Ever since you met David, you've changed. This isn't the daughter I raised. You're right, I said softly. The daughter you raised would have said yes. Would have smiled and made room and pretended it was fine. Would have spent the next year being Tyler's alarm clock, his chef, his maid, his therapist, his bank, while he recorded music in my living room at 2 a.m. and brought random strangers home and ate my groceries and monopolized the bathroom and made me feel guilty for asking him to clean up after himself. That daughter would have shrunk herself to make space for his comfort. I'm not her anymore. Tyler grabbed his jacket from the back of a chair. Fine. I don't need this. I don't need you. His voice cracked. I'll figure it out on my own like I always do. You've never figured it out on your own, I said. Not cruelly, just factually. You've always had me. And Mom and Dad, and Grandma, and Uncle Richard. You've spent your entire adult life passing your problems around the family like a hot potato, and whoever's holding you when the music stops gets stuck with the bill. He stormed out. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the new picture frames I hadn't hung yet. My mother gathered her purse, her movements stiff and precise. When you're ready to apologize and remember what family means, you know where to find us. I do know what family means, I said. It means people who love you without requiring you to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. They left. Half the guests followed them, mostly my relatives, their faces tight with disapproval. The other half stayed. David's family, my coworkers, my college roommate who'd witnessed the Tyler chaos firsthand, my neighbor from my old building who'd had to call the cops when Tyler's friends got drunk and started throwing bottles in the alley. After everyone left, David and I sat on the floor surrounded by boxes, my back against the wall I'd painted sage green, his arm around my shoulders. You okay? He asked. I stared at the empty room that was finally, completely mine. No spare key hidden under a mat. No emergency contact who'd weaponize access. No family member who viewed my boundaries as suggestions. I'm more than okay, I said. I'm free. He kissed my temple. Your mom's going to call tomorrow with some guilt trip about how you're tearing the family apart. Probably, I agreed, and I won't answer. That night I dreamed of spreadsheets and locked doors and rooms full of light that belonged only to me. The next morning proved David right. I woke to 17 missed calls from my mother, 12 texts from various aunts and uncles, and a Facebook message from my cousin asking if I was having a breakdown. I blocked the calls, muted the group chats, and made coffee in my kitchen while listening to the silence. No footsteps overhead, no music bleeding through walls, no one else's mess contaminating my space. David was scrambling eggs when my phone buzzed with a notification I couldn't ignore. Tyler had posted a GoFundMe. The title made my stomach twist. Emergency Housing Fund, Betrayed by Family. The description was a masterpiece of manipulation. My sister kicked me out of her house during her housewarming party because I asked for help during a difficult time. I'm a musician trying to make ends meet, and I lost access to the safe housing that was promised to me. Now I have nowhere to go and no way to afford first and last month's rent on my own. I'm just trying to rebuild my life after my family turned their backs on me. Every dollar helps. 3 donations already. $55 total. One donor had written, "Family should support family. Sorry you're going through this." David read over my shoulder and burst out laughing. He's describing it like he was already living there and you evicted him. That's the point, I said. Whoever speaks first controls the narrative. I took a screenshot, saved it to a folder labeled Tyler Documentation, and blocked him on every platform. I'd learned from my therapist that engaging with someone else's fiction just validated their right to write it. We'd planned to spend the weekend finishing the unpacking, but David suggested a drive instead. We headed north along the coast, windows down, no destination in mind. Just distance between me and the phones that kept buzzing with other people's opinions about my boundaries. At a rest stop overlooking the ocean, I checked my phone one last time. A text from my mother. "We need to talk. This has gone too far. Family helps family. That's how we raised you." I stared at the words, feeling the old guilt try to claw its way up my throat. The voice that said I was selfish, ungrateful, cold. The voice that had been installed in me like software, running in the background of every decision I'd ever made. Then I replied with a photo. Not of David and me smiling. Not of the ocean, just a picture of my new front door with its shiny new deadbolt. Caption: "Help isn't theft. Love is an obligation." I blocked her number afterward. Not forever, maybe. Just until I could hear my own thoughts without her voice drowning them out. Back home, we unpacked slowly, carefully, like we were building something sacred. Every box felt lighter. Every item I placed on a shelf felt chosen, not negotiated. David hung curtains while I organized books, and neither of us had to ask permission or explain our choices. The family group chat went silent after I left it. My cousin's messages dried up. The text thread that used to ping daily with good morning, funny memes, and passive-aggressive questions about when I'd settle down and have kids flatlined. It didn't hurt the way I thought it would. It felt earned. 3 weeks passed before the next wave hit. My Aunt Carol texted, "Your mother is heartbroken. Don't you think you're being a bit dramatic over a simple misunderstanding?" I didn't respond. Silence was its own kind of answer. Then my father called from a number I didn't recognize. I answered without thinking, and his voice filled my kitchen like smoke. "Rachel, enough is enough. Your brother is struggling, and you're making it worse. He's family. You don't turn your back on family." "I didn't turn my back," I said. "I just stopped being a doormat. That's not fair." "Dad, when has Tyler ever faced a consequence? When has he ever had to solve his own problem without someone swooping in to fix it?" Silence on the other end. Long enough that I thought he'd hung up. "He's your brother," he finally said. Like that explained everything, excused everything. "And I'm your daughter," I said. "But you've never protected me the way you protect him. You've never asked him to sacrifice the way you ask me to. You've never held him accountable the way you hold me responsible for managing everyone's emotions." More silence. "I have to go, Dad." I hung up before he could respond, before the guilt could convince me to apologize for telling the truth. That afternoon I did something ceremonial that felt like surgery. I went through my phone and deleted contacts. Not blocked. Deleted. Every number attached to someone who'd spent years asking me to shrink, to give, to make room for Tyler's comfort at the expense of my own. I kept David's family, my coworkers, my college friends who'd never asked me to set myself on fire. Then I walked to the refrigerator and removed the family photos one by one. Magnets clattered into the drawer. Most of the pictures were staged anyway. Forced smiles at holidays, posed peace at graduations. I kept one, just one. It wasn't a happy photo. Someone had taken it accidentally during the housewarming confrontation, probably while fumbling with their phone. My mother mid-frown. Tyler's face twisted in disbelief, me holding the lease agreement like a shield. David steady beside me, his hand on my back. It wasn't beautiful, but it was real. And that's all I wanted now. My first therapy session after the confrontation was harder than I expected. I cried for 40 minutes straight. Not because I regretted my choice, but because grief isn't logical. I was mourning the family I'd wanted, not the family I had. You're not grieving them, my therapist said gently. You're grieving the version of yourself who believed you could earn their respect by being endlessly available. That landed like truth. By the 4th session, I'd started using new language. Not I cut off my family, but I stopped participating in dysfunction. Not I'm being selfish, but I'm practicing self-preservation. Words matter. They reshape reality. People started testing my boundaries almost immediately. My Aunt Susan sent a card. We miss you at Sunday dinners. Can't we all just move past this? I didn't respond. Moving past meant forgetting. I wasn't interested in amnesia. My cousin Michael texted, Tyler's really struggling. His girlfriend left him. Maybe you could check in? I blocked Michael. Being related didn't grant unlimited access to my emotional labor. One evening, David found me on the porch, staring at the street like I was waiting for someone. Regret? He asked, sitting beside me. I shook my head, just noticing how quiet it is. I spent 30 years thinking their noise was love. Turns out it was just control wearing a different mask. He didn't answer. Just held my hand until the sun went down, and the streetlights flickered on, and the quiet felt less like absence and more like peace. A month later, I got a voicemail from my father. He didn't say much. Just, your mother wants to talk. No conditions. Just coffee. I didn't call back. Because no conditions from my parents had always meant we'll pretend nothing happened and you'll go back to being our emotional support animal. The next day I found a letter slipped under my door. No return address, but I recognized my mother's handwriting on the envelope. Inside was a photo from my childhood. Tyler and me on the front steps of our old house, arms around each other, gap-toothed grins, matching shirts our grandmother had bought us. On the back, in my mother's perfect cursive, don't let anger erase the good memories. I stared at that photo for a long time. Long enough for my coffee to go cold. Long enough for David to come home from work and find me still sitting at the kitchen table, the picture between my hands like evidence. What is it? He asked. Emotional manipulation disguised as nostalgia, I said. He looked at the photo. 2 kids who didn't know yet what their relationship would become, who hadn't learned the roles they'd be forced to play. Do you want to keep it? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Then I tore the photo in half. Not violently, just deliberately. A clean split down the middle. I'm not erasing memories, I said. I'm just refusing to let her rewrite history. That photo is from before Tyler learned he could take anything he wanted and I'd always forgive him. Before my parents decided loving me meant using me. I don't need a picture to remember what we were, and I don't need to pretend it's what we are. I threw both halves away, washed my hands, made fresh coffee. Freedom doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it's just the quiet click of a trash can lid closing on someone else's version of your story. 6 months passed. My house stopped feeling new and started feeling like home. David and I developed rhythms. Saturday morning, farmers market runs. Sunday evening, meal prep. Wednesday, movie nights, where we fell asleep on the couch and woke up at midnight with Netflix asking if we were still watching. The family silence became normal. Expected. Almost comfortable. My career took off in ways I hadn't anticipated. Without the constant drain of managing Tyler's crises, I had energy for projects I'd been postponing. I got promoted, started mentoring junior developers, joined a women in tech leadership group. Turns out, when you stop being everyone's solution, you have time to become your own. Our first anniversary in the house arrived quietly. No party this time. Just David and me and takeout from the Thai place down the street. Remember this time last year? He said, unpacking spring rolls. Hard to forget, I said. That was the day I chose myself. Any regrets? I looked around the living room. Plants I'd nurtured thriving on the windowsill. Books organized exactly how I wanted them. Art I'd chosen without consulting anyone. Every corner of this space reflected decisions I'd made freely, without negotiation or compromise or guilt. Not even one, I said. That night, as we were loading the dishwasher, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Rachel? My mother's voice, smaller than I remembered it. Please don't hang up. I didn't hang up, but I didn't speak either. I just want you to know we love you, she said. And when you're ready to be part of the family again, we're here. When you're ready. Not when we're ready to apologize. Not when we've learned to respect your boundaries. When you're ready to fold yourself back into the shape they preferred. Mom, I said quietly, I am part of a family. It's just not the one that requires me to disappear to make everyone else comfortable. That's not fair, she whispered. We never asked you to disappear. You asked me to give Tyler my bedroom, my savings, my credit score, my apartment, my dignity, my peace. You just never called it disappearing. You called it being a good sister, being mature, being the responsible one. But it was disappearing all the same. Silence on the other end. The sound of her breathing, uneven and sharp. I have to go, I said. Rachel. I hung up, blocked the number, deleted the call from my history. David wrapped his arms around me from behind. You okay? Yeah, I said, and meant it. I really am. That weekend, we took a drive up the coast. Same route we'd taken a year ago, right after the housewarming. The ocean looked different now. Calmer, maybe. Or maybe I was just calmer looking at it. We parked at the same overlook, watched the waves crash against rocks that had been standing there long before my family drama and would stand there long after. Do you think you'll ever talk to them again? David asked. I considered it. Really considered it. Not the fantasy version where they suddenly understood and apologized and became the family I'd always wanted. The real version, where they stayed exactly who they were and I had to decide if I could accept that. Maybe, I said. But not like before. Not as their designated savior. Not as Tyler's eternal backup plan. If we talk again, it'll be as equals. With boundaries. With respect. And if they can't do that, then no. We won't talk. And I'll be okay with that too. He nodded, squeezed my hand. We drove home in comfortable silence. The kind you only get after a war that's finally ended. When we pulled into the driveway, I noticed the porch light glowing warm through the front window. I'd forgotten to turn it off this morning, and usually that would bother me. But today it felt like the house had been waiting, keeping itself lit until we returned. I unlocked the door without hesitation, no bracing for who might be inside. No wondering who'd let themselves in. Just my key and my lock in my house that held only people I'd chosen. David headed for the kitchen. I walked to the living room window and looked out at the street, at the neighborhood I'd worked so hard to afford. Everything I'd built was here. Everything I'd protected was safe. I used to think boundaries meant losing family. Now I know boundaries define family. The real kind. The chosen kind. The kind that doesn't come with invoices or scorecards or the constant weight of unpaid emotional debt. My phone buzzed. A text from David's mom. Dinner next Sunday? We're trying a new lasagna recipe and need taste testers. I smiled and typed back, we'll be there. That's family. Simple invitations. No strings. No hidden costs. Just people who wanted my company without requiring my surrender. I walked to the kitchen, where David was already pulling out ingredients for our Saturday morning pancakes tradition we'd started months ago. Your mom invited us to dinner next week, I said. Of course she did, he said, grinning. She's been perfecting that lasagna for a month. We're basically guinea pigs. I love being a guinea pig for your mom. That's because she doesn't ask you to fund your brother's delusions. I laughed. Actually laughed. The kind of laugh that comes from your stomach, free and light and untangled from obligation. This was it. This was the life I'd fought for. Not perfect, not dramatic, not Instagram-worthy. Just mine. Fully, completely, unapologetically mine. Every time I unlock this door, I'm choosing myself. Every time I say no without apologizing, I'm honoring the boundaries that keep me whole. Every time I wake up without dread, I'm living proof that cutting off toxicity isn't cruel. It's survival. And survival, I've learned, is the most generous thing you can offer yourself.